Welcome back. And, while not speaking on this podcast, with most of my time, what I'm actually doing is creating spaces for women to live beyond the patriarchal sex paradigm and return to their wholeness through immersions, through training, and private mentoring. And today, this solo episode is one where I'll answer a few questions that have come in. And I enjoy these questions because it shows how many different kinds of people are listening to this podcast who are at all different stages of understanding what's happening here and what this podcast is all about. Welcome to this provocative and heartfelt podcast, where patriarchy is defined as a paradigm that both men and women uphold in different ways. Here you get to listen in on genuine conversations between leaders from around the world to discover more mutual respect and less division, as well as more pleasure and love in your life. My name is Dévashi Shakti, and you are warmly welcome to be part of these Beyond Patriarchal Sex conversations. The first one is with a woman from Maui, Hawaii, and she says that she loves what she's hearing in the episodes, that it's so important. She feels it in her whole being, and that sometimes the episodes are triggering for her, but that she's learning so much. And her question is about divine feminine, divine masculine, balancing the polarities inside of ourselves. And she explained that she hears so many contrasting views from different people, and it's creating confusion in her about what to follow and what to live by. And by the way, I'm not sure I got her entire question because the voice note that she sent in, so by the way, everyone, if you don't get all of your question in, feel free to leave a few of the voice notes. That microphone icon that you see in the show notes of each episode, this is where you can leave me a question or a comment or something that you would like to share, but it's quite short, and so you might need to do a couple of those at once to get everything that you want to say coming through. But coming back to this first question, so divine feminine, divine masculine, balancing polarities. I find personally it very helpful to deeply learn and remain connected to where polarity teachings originate from. And this is present in many cultures and in many ancient traditions, actually. But I think the most intact comes from Vedic philosophy and pre-Vedic times. And to me, that brings much more depth than just listening to the modern people discussing polarity from a very conceptual place that doesn't have roots into tradition or oftentimes real understanding of Shiva, Shakti, masculine and feminine. A lot of people copy each other and don't truly understand what they're talking about. And a lot of what I'm seeing quite recently, and you may have noticed this as well, is that quite a lot of the people talking about polarity have political agendas in there. And this is not something I noticed in the past. This is definitely a recent thing. And yes, and then there's the people that copy that without realizing that they need to deconstruct some of that religious and political agenda in there. And so it's become even more confusing, I imagine, for people. So some things I can say about it. Um, Aside from Vedic philosophy, I also have a lot of embodied experience in polarity in the felt sense of my nervous system, of my actual physical body experience. And this is something I encourage everyone, and in this case for women, to really have for themselves. And you can gain that in your own somatic sense through Tigress practices, by the way. And for me, this has informed so much how I see things, because without that direct connection to primal reality where polarity currents truly exist, there's probably nowhere else to go but the intellectual confusion from all the contrasting ideas and concepts out there. And so if this question from this lovely woman in Maui is about polarity from the perspective of women being in their feminine or women being in their masculine, this is what I have to say about that. So we each have a unique proportion individually of masculine and feminine energies and aspects that are most alive in us. And by the way, what I'm about to say here is not the usual spiel of we all have masculine and feminine, which I hope is obvious to everyone listening to this, because I get that this is maybe not a beginner podcast. And what I mean is that underneath our social conditioning, underneath our trauma survival responses, each person, in this case, each woman, has a unique configuration of her yin and yang energies that make her unique and that is perfect for her. And this is definitely something we teach in the Tigress Path, by the way. So if you really want to learn it and really have it in your own felt sense, not just your mind, then I can't recommend that highly enough, because it will clear up so much for you. But to explain more about it in words here for now, there is no one way that all women should be. This is largely proposed online amongst pseudo-polarity coaches, but it's simply not true. Female embodiment work was never meant to be just about women learning how to be more feminine, because that can lead to performance and another layer of conditioning. And so the way that I guide female embodiment has always been to discover what your authentic expression is for you as an individual. So that means there is no box that you should be trying to fit into. This is not something to play with just to get the guy, or none of that. The real feminine current is quite different to what a lot of pseudo polarity coaches say. And I'm going to describe this through the symbology of tigress. The word tigress, the meaning in there is that it's a symbol of the feminine being both soft and fierce. Okay, so women are naturally, innately both soft and strong. And the whole point of female embodiment work is about recovering that full range of your yin and yang energies and expressions. And that recovery of your full range includes, firstly, acknowledging and uncovering suppressed responses so that your nervous system is no longer constantly negotiating past trauma that got pushed down for all kinds of reasons. So when a woman's trauma recovery has happened for the most part, which I won't try and explain here because I'll take away from the question, when that's happened somatically for the most part, the evidence of that shows in her nervous system. And she can then get to know the unique blueprint of her natural feminine yin and feminine yang. I think those terminologies are a really great way of understanding this, because it's not as simple as a woman's social conditioning making her more masculinized or more feminized in a way that's unnatural to her. So underneath that very real level of social conditioning, what I'm talking about here is the natural resting underlying state for every individual woman. The woman's asking this question, so I'm talking about women right now, that you have that natural state underneath all of the stuff that you had to learn and then unlearn. Okay, so when it comes to women, when it comes to the real feminine energy, there are dynamic, boundaried, strong, vital, and even fight responses that we need to be able to access to be healthy and whole as women. And some of those expressions could be perceived as masculine. And when it's happening in a healthy way, I would call that yang feminine. Okay. And the point of recovery, though, is not to be in those expressions all the time, to not be in those dynamic energies all of the time. It's simply that you would be able to access them if you needed to, rather than having constant self-suppression of your full range due to not wanting to upset someone else or because of unconscious past survival responses or other kinds of present limitations. Because your full range is what makes you whole as a woman. This is what enables you to handle yourself and also to handle a man or a masculine partner in their wholeness. Because women naturally are not always soft and submissive, and men are not meant to be always dominant and strong as a static, inflexible state. That's not real. That's the lie of the conceptual framing of polarity. And especially inside of a relationship, trying to enforce or maintain that static conceptual model, it does not work because it doesn't allow for each individual's authenticity and fullness. You see, because you aren't half a person, half, a woman, you aren't half a person with only yin feminine energy, meaning the softer aspects of the feminine. And he is not half a person only with yang masculine energy as a man. Because for both people to be in their wholeness, their fullness, their sovereignty, their most natural state, post patriarchy, I'm going to say, in that both people are whole unto themselves, and their meeting then allows authentic flow in whatever attraction dynamic is optimal for those people. And I've got to say, I wasn't entirely sure if this question, because I don't think I got to hear all of it, was leading towards polarity around relationship intimacy or women taking hormonal replacements. I wasn't catching the entire thing. So I will just leave it there for now. And I'll invite this woman who's asked the question to say more, to ask more if I've missed something. And yeah, please feel free to send another voice note if you like. And before I move to the next question, I want to say that in learning about women's somatic psychology, there is a complete framework for the female psyche, the female nervous system that has emerged through what I've been teaching to women for years. And it's based on the visceral, somatic, felt sense of developing our female nervous systems. And quite a few women have that training with me now, and there'll be more opening to the next enrollment coming up soon. Okay, and the next question is an interesting one. She says, if women have the ability to change the paradigm of men and women through how they relate with each other intimately, she was basically getting concerned about this meaning that it's trying to change the other person and how that doesn't really work unless the other person wants to change themselves. So she's asking, can I help her understand and help her differentiate between these two ideas? Because her actual question is, how can I believe women have the ability to change the paradigm while not at the same time controlling or trying to change the other person? So I thought this was a really great question. And even if you're listening and you kind of already know the answer, I wonder if what I'm about to say is still valuable for you actually, because it might, even if it just confirms what you already know, right? And her question is actually in response to a transformation that I referred to back in episode 31. If you haven't heard that, it's a really great way for you to see the actual results that women who work with me are getting. Because while I'm having like side note conversations with people on this podcast, the deep inner work happens off this podcast in the full signature course that this woman participated in, where she had amazing results, not just for herself, but also for her partner. So if you didn't catch those variety of results, go and have a listen to episode 31. And that's where this question arose from. So my answer to her is that there is no intention of trying to change someone else. There is no fixing, there is no controlling, There is no rescuing. There's not even a hoping to have that effect. It's simply the natural consequence of alignment. It's the way that nature works. This is what I call our divine design. And the more in alignment with yourself and the more in your body you are, as opposed to living in your head, it will automatically impact the other person. For example, when you are showing up differently in how you're experiencing yourself and then how you're expressing yourself, the other person has space to respond to you in a new or different way. And I want to explain more because it is an important nuance. Um, I want to add to this too that love is the force between two people that often creates the link for deep change to happen. And this, and like beyond words, force of love is actual alchemy, but from the primal energy of your body, not your mind, or, not just your thoughts about polarity, from these natural embodied shifts that I'm talking about. That's what makes it so. That's what brings these incredible outcomes. And I want to explain more because this is really important. Women have typically, certainly everyone listening to this podcast, if you're a woman, women have typically had enough of being treated a certain way when it comes to patriarchal sex. And so they become at a point no longer available for that. So if she is engaged in learning how to live beyond patriarchal sex, her intentionality is in what she wants to experience for her own well-being, for her own self-respect and self-love, so much so that she would maybe rather not have the same sex at all, or maybe not, it contemplates not even having the relationship unless the sex and relationship can meet all of who she really is in her authenticity. So she doesn't have to feel like she's cutting off from herself to maintain that intimacy sexually. And I've got to say that from having worked with women for over 25 years, often women are angry at men about having to do that, about having to cut off from herself to maintain sexual intimacy. And while that is, of course, valid, what I say in the women's space is that this emotional charge, it needs to have expression in the women's sacred space, not at the man or the masculine partner, okay? It's like, it's how we alchemize that emotion, how we transmute it, how we do that through Tigress, for example. It will rewire her nervous system so that what she wants, which is to feel honored and respected and related to as a full person with her own feelings, her own sensations, and her own desires, that's something that she can have. Because it's pretty normal for a woman to blame a man for that predicament that she's in. But the thing is, when she's ready, she will likely find after that emotional release that I just talked about, as well as the nourishment in the women's space. And to get technical about it, it is truly a very deep replenishment to her female nervous system through all the oxytocin that is cultivated in that women's space. This affects her in such a way where she comes to the place of realizing that actually she wasn't given the education and guidance that she needed to be in alignment with her own well-being in the first place. And that can't possibly be just the fault of the man or men. It's the whole culture, it's society, it's generational trauma. I think of patriarchal sex as an expression of generational trauma. To start implementing practical ways to go beyond patriarchal sex in your life, I've created some easy step-by-step, low-cost ways for you to start having that outcome now. These are to elevate relationship with yourself, with a future partner, or to transform the relationship you are already in, whether you're a man or a woman. These practical steps are effective, they're tested, and they are somatic things that you can start today so that you don't default into old patterns that bring the same disappointment and resentments, no matter how long you may have felt stuck in what you don't want. So, see the link in the show notes to register for your guide to going beyond patriarchal sex. So, while many nervous system approaches often stop at releasing trauma or emotional charge, in Tigress, we also work in the post traumatic growth space, which means rebuilding ourselves on the other side of releasing what we don't want so that we can return to what I call our original state, where our naturalness gets revealed. And this is what I was referring to in the previous question when I talked about that natural state underneath our programming, underneath our social conditioning. So after repressed emotion, like all the things that your body and your voice and your mind didn't say and didn't express, and it's been held onto for years and years and years, when all of that gets to come out of your body, out of your cellular system, Tigress will take you there. There is also then a process of bringing your mind, your heart, your womb into a state of coherence. And this is somatic alignment. And this is where it becomes a nourishing way of being that you practice as such. So you're practicing living from such a restored state where your nervous system becomes predisposed to what you do want rather than continuing with what you don't want. Okay, so it's somatic repatterning beyond the patriarchal sex paradigm. Okay, so coming back to uh, this statement, this incredible statement that a woman made in episode 31 that I reported back to share with you. Her attention was so in and with herself and her body that it affected her partner profoundly. And I'm going to repeat here what he said. These are his exact words. I don't know what you're doing, but your body, talking to his partner, his woman, is changing me. I don't know what you're doing, but your body is changing me. It opened his heart so profoundly when he was saying this that he had tears professing his love for her. And apparently, he's not usually a crier because not because she tried to change anything in him, but because of how she was being differently within herself, resting, knowing, attuning to herself profoundly in a different way than before. So, to be in integrity with herself, she came to a place where that was the only way she was willing to be. It's like a commitment or a recommitment to yourself. And when you learn how to hold space for yourself in that, the person you're intimately relating with is going to notice, and they will naturally shift as a response to your wholeness. Okay. And in this is where women can go a little wrong, so to speak, when they try to tell the man what she's no longer available for, or masculine partner, right? Like she's trying to intellectually explain to him, but that is not for the other, it's for her. And this is the kind of thing I explain in the women's space, okay? And at times, of course, some things need explanation, but what I'm referring to is when a woman might have the tendency to communicate through complaint to get her needs met, rather than learning how to come into alignment with the version of herself that can have her needs met. Okay. So he can't, basically, he can't give her an experience that she's not in alignment for unless he's what I would recognize as an initiated man, and most are not that. And so he just becomes a match to how she wants to be treated. And she does that by shifting relationship with herself. But this is not just a decision mentally that you make, because I know a lot of women listening to this are already in that thinking space of, I'm no longer available for blah, 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 what I don't want anymore. But the thing is, there is some intentionality and effort that needs to go into renewing relationship with yourself somatically. And her effort, though, in this is not going to be, well, it's transformed out of trying to teach him or tell him how to be different. And it's more into when the woman is coming at this from a really embodied place where her way of being in her body, in how she carries herself, that is the teaching. She becomes the teaching, you see, instead of telling him. And this is such a win-win-win. It's so much better for the woman's well-being, so much better for him, so much better for the relationship. So there's an internal shift inside of the woman. And if he wants to be with her, and that's the only way she's available, it calls him to notice that something's different, and it gives him space to engage differently than before. But this is why I say love typically needs to be present, because in one-off or short-term encounters, depending on the consciousness of the people involved, there's usually not enough desire for the heart connection to develop the true intimacy for the quality of lovemaking that I'm speaking about. So love is often the motivation for deeper connection if you want longevity and sustainability living beyond patriarchal sex in your existing relationship. So I do hope this has helped to answer that question and to understand that there's no force, no coercion of any kind in your partner shifting because you have. It's simply a natural consequence of embodying alignment with yourself, with your female wholeness as a woman, and becoming the version of you who's capable of living beyond patriarchal sex. Okay. So the last question for today is, when will the next round of the immersion be happening for women to take that somatic rewiring journey of living beyond patriarchal sex? Okay, so the results that were spoken about in episode 31, they were women that did that course, and that course will be opening again soon. So if you want to find out when, it's really soon actually, stay tuned to these episodes, or better yet, come to the Tigress Path, thetigresspath.com website, and get on the email list so you will get the invitation to join the course via email. And just to say a tiny bit more about that signature program here, so, although I've been sharing this work with women for a really, really long time, so many years, in the last year, in 2025, I created a step-by-step process for women to permanently live beyond patriarchal sex if they want, and to have that change at the level of their nervous systems somatically. So it's not just information, and it's also not just sex techniques that you can get in many other places. This is a specific process that works on you emotionally and psychologically, somatically, and energetically. And I really want to let you know that there's also a few low-cost opportunities to start implementing some of this learning before taking that entire immersion. So make sure to have a look in the show notes for where you can buy that actually. So it's available, and it's aimed for dating and meeting someone for the first time, the early stages of building connection, so that you don't by default go into the same things that you always did, which of course leads to the same place of what you don't want in the vicinity of patriarchal sex. But there's also a version of this to apply to existing relationships. And that's really amazing because even the women who think, what do you mean? But I've been stuck in this paradigm for 20 something years. Do you really think this can change? Totally, it can. There are endless examples, actual evidence that I have from working with women over the years and in the recent immersion to be able to confirm that it is possible. This is proven. Okay. And so the thing is, with patriarchal sex, women will often tolerate it. Women, especially, will tolerate it at first. And this is why it's misleading because a lot of guys think that they're really great at sex, but actually, she doesn't see you that way, most likely, if you're a man listening to this, unless you're an initiated man, especially when patriarchal sex is continuing on for some time, her tolerance will be reduced. And when she does not feel loved in her body, this will create problems because the patriarchal sex paradigm is not the current of love in the body. Okay. And when a woman is not having a satisfying experience emotionally, sexually, all of that, she will very likely blame him for it. And at some point, it will need to be addressed of what she has previously consented to, of what she didn't want. So part of this unraveling is for a woman to acknowledge her part in that, her participation in that. And so why not pattern into yourself somatically and into each other from the start and the space between the two of you? Why not pattern that for the optimal experience that you could be having instead? And I want to say that the act of penetration sex, which is what everyone just runs to so fast and assumes is going to be happening as though there are no other options. I want to say that penetration sex is actually an advanced practice because the thing is, unless you really have shifted at the level of your nervous system to no longer be stuck in the patriarchal sex paradigm, penetration sex is too tempting to go into the same rut as before. So there are other things to be bringing in and exploring, getting to know yourself and each other's bodies with, so that that can be entered into with a different energy, different outcome. And for me, from all my years of experience with women, I really do believe that it's our place as women, or whoever is the more feminine being, to bring the subtle awareness that leads to living beyond patriarchal sex. So I know it's not easy, but instead of being resentful at your partner for not already knowing how to connect with you and your body like that, just remember that these are essentially feminine mysteries. This is part of women's wisdom. And so it's you who are in command of that as a woman. And so I believe that this is our realm as women, as feminine beings, to learn how to wield our power without leaving ourselves behind. Because guess what? That's exactly what happens in the patriarchal sex paradigm, right? And I think it's important for women to realize that in most guys, they have a ton of pornographic programming. They are somatically wired for patriarchal sex. And if you just fall into that, if you fall under that spell like a trance, doing the same things that you've done before with no new consciousness entering, no new expanded nervous system pathways for higher amounts of pleasure to be moving through you, there is a nervous system entrainment to the paradigm of patriarchal sex. And so what I've found is that there's a somatic rewiring necessary to live beyond that conditioning. So there's a couple of options with these short new guides that I've made for you. One is to explore connection for a brand new relationship, and that is including with yourself, by the way, even if you are not looking to be in a relationship. you still will greatly benefit from unraveling yourself from the patriarchal sex momentum in how you are with your own body. Okay. So there is a guide, a very practical guide for brand new relationships, and a different one for couples who've been together for a really long time. This is about nervous system expansion. It's not just sexual techniques. And this is very specifically about living beyond patriarchal sex. So if you'd like to journey together to feel what else is possible, or with yourself, to get closer and get used to being with yourself or another, being with your body in a more intentional and conscious way, this really can be learned, but it's not just there by default. So coming to the end of this episode now, I hope that this Q&A has helped to integrate some of the things that you've been hearing in throughout all of the episodes, maybe, and know that you are welcome to leave a voice note that I will reply to somewhere in the podcast in a future solo episode. You're welcome to share your name and where you're from, and I can also respond anonymously if you like as well. And I've got to say that I do love that both women and men are listening to this podcast. I've noticed that the male listeners have been increasing recently, which is very cool. So that's it for now, everyone. And I've got to tell you, there are more great guest episodes coming up. So I look forward to being here with you again very soon for those. Thanks for sharing this episode with your friends if it's moved you. And know that sharing it genuinely does help to spread this message, and also to attract more interesting speakers to join the Beyond Patriarchal Sex conversation. And if you're a woman who'd like to get an exclusive discount to the full signature program of how to live beyond patriarchal sex, then write a 5-star review on either Apple or Spotify, take a screenshot and send it in to the email address below to get the reduced rate to the full course called I Broke the Spell. And keep tuning in to these weekly episodes so that we can all be part of shifting division into connection for ourselves and for the coming generations.